Why are behavioral interview questions so popular? Well, today we're going to talk about that. One of the main reasons is that behavioral interview questions, they allow the person interviewing you to see how you've acted in the past and then predict how you're going to act in the future. And they kind of force you into pulling from real world examples. Well, today, not only we're going to talk about them, but I'm going to give you 13 of the most popular behavioral interview questions and walk you through how you can successfully answer them. If you are new to the channel, welcome. And if you are not new to the channel, welcome back. This is Ben with Ben Talk Talent. I've been in recruiting for about 11 years now, and I want to talk today about behavioral interview questions because I think it is incredibly important to know how to successfully answer these questions. First, what are they? Instead of asking you a question like, hey, Ben, are you good under pressure? Right? Which is really, that's a closed-ended question. You can say, yes, I am. Next question. They instead phrase it like this. Ben, tell me about a time when you had to deal with competing deadlines, right? And what that does as a candidate is it forces you to look back into your past and give a real example and talk through how you handled it. It gives the person interviewing you so much more information, and it gives you a good idea of how you handle things in the moment and how you're going to be as an employee. So they are incredibly popular. So that's why they are asked. Instead of a closed-ended question, it is an open-ended question that allows them to kind of get an understanding of the way you react, how you handle certain situations that they can kind of force you into answering. So I've done this a little bit before where I've talked about the technique. Today I'm going to give you 13 different questions that are incredibly popular in terms of which behavioral interview questions are used, but I've done a video in the past on the STAR technique. And the STAR technique is kind of the foundation of how you answer these interview questions. So it's an acronym. S, situation, T, task, A, action, and R, result. What this allows you to do is it allows you to kind of format your answer, if you will. So you take, well, this was a situation, this was a task that needed completed, this was the action I took, and the result was blank. So as you're answering all of these interview questions, you want to use that as almost like the skeleton. I want you to keep that in mind as we go over these questions, because we're going to go through them real quick and we're going to talk about them but at a high level, 10,000 foot view, whenever you're asked a behavioral interview question, you need to be thinking about the STAR technique because it's really going to allow you to answer this in the most impactful way. The last thing I want to talk about is the questions themselves. So we're going to go through 13 and we're going to talk about it, but one of the things you want to be aware of is that if you're asked a behavioral interview question, there's usually a behavior they're getting at, right? Or a set of behaviors or skills. And if they're asking it, it's because those are important. You know, say you were in a role that didn't require you to move quickly, right? It was one where so much of success was about precision. It's about getting things done the right way. They would never ask you an interview question about moving quickly or rapidly, or handling multiple things. The questions they're gonna ask you are about your position, about your attention to detail. So it's kind of a key. It's kind of a thing that you need to look for. Whenever you are asked a behavioral interview question, odds are whatever behaviors they are getting at are really important to them, and that should inform the way you answer the questions moving forward. So that's one thing to think about. So with that being said, let's jump into the questions. Okay, so the first question we're gonna talk today is give an example about a goal you achieved and how you achieved it. Okay, so this is kind of a basic one, but it's a one that you're very likely to encounter. What are they getting at here? What they're getting at is, are you the type of person who sets goals, right? Do you think about, goals, objectives? Do you go after them? How do you plan it? So that's at the core of what they're getting at here. So let's talk about what you need to do. So first and foremost, make it relevant to them. Make it a work one. Don't make it a personal one. It's really easy to be like, well, I had a personal goal of getting in shape, and then you talk about that. That's not what they're looking for here. If they're asking you this question, they're looking for on the job. What is a goal you had on the job and how do you achieve it? Talked about how you planned. This is really important. Nobody wants to hear about how you had a goal and you just got lucky and achieved it. They want to hear about how you thought about it, you made a strategic plan to go along achieving this goal, and then how you executed that. And then the last thing, they want to hear about how you're showing initiative here, right? Again, this is one of those things where it's not like they want to hear how by the seat of your pants you did something. They want to hear about you planned, you took initiative, you went above and beyond, and you achieved a worthwhile goal. Okay, so this is a really good one. And it's tell me about a time where you needed to get information from somebody who wasn't responsive. How did you handle it? So this one is so good because we can all kind of relate to it. Who doesn't have a person that they've worked with in the past who you had to get information from, you sent an email, they did not answer, and then you were frustrated waiting for this person? So it's important to cover a few things here. This is a very relatable situation, so it's okay to admit frustration here. But they want to see that you were patient, you were understanding. They're looking for somebody who is able to work with others. So your example really needs to get at this. It needs to get how you're a good teammate, how you're someone who can follow through and follow up in a polite but effective manner. And that's what you want to be saying when you're talking about this question. So that's how you go about answering it. Okay, so the next question. Describe a time when you had to interact with a difficult client. What was the situation and how did you handle it? This is another really good one. You're only going to get this question if you're client facing, right? If you work just internally, they're probably not going to ask you this unless it's about your internal clients. But most of the time, this is an outward facing, question. And if you get this question, they probably value client interaction a ton. So it's important that you nail this question. So they're looking for a few things here. They're looking for business tact, right? Somebody who can deal with a client. Maybe this client isn't adhering to promises they've made or the agreement. So you need to follow up in a way that gets results, but you also need to do it in a way that is tactful because you are serving them. As a client, you're responsible making sure that they have a good customer experience, that you deliver upon your promises, and that you retain them as a client. So I think it's important here to kind of walk the line between, being forceful enough to get the results, but then still being servant-minded in the sense that you're not, creating a negative experience for them. So in your answer here, you've got to talk about how you're able to follow through, you're able to do it in a polite but effective way, and you're able to retain the client and ultimately lead to their satisfaction. That's an important fact about answering this. Okay, so let's talk about the next one. The next one is describe a stressful work situation you were in and how you were able to handle it. So cat's out of the bag here. If you get this interview question, you're probably going to be working in an environment where it's a little bit stressful. And from time to time, you're gonna have deadlines, you're gonna have difficulties, and you are going to be expected to navigate them in a professional and calm, effective manner. So that's what you kind of wanna demonstrate when you're answering this question, right? You wanna demonstrate a few things. One, you remain calm under pressure and you were focused on the outcome. There was these external factors, they were making it more challenging for you, but you were very goal-oriented, you were calm, and you were focused on achieving the desirable outcome. The next thing, you want to show the time period. If they're asking this question, they want you to kind of lay out to them, well, it was between blank and blank. This is how long I had to successfully accomplish this goal. So keep that in mind. That's one of the things you want to state. And then the last thing, you want to show that your hard work and your strategy were the key to you having success here. And that's how you answer this interview question. Okay, so let's talk about the next one. Describe a time when you delivered excellent customer service. This is another one of those situations where if you get this question, you know it's because you were customer facing. And the expectation of this role is that the customers who deal with you end up very satisfied with your service. Your answer needs to reflect that. So you want to show a firm grasp of understanding the client, what they need, and what they need to achieve from your interaction. The second thing you want to do is show how you went above and beyond. When you're answering this question, if you're able to show, hey, this was my responsibility, but I did this, that's a good way to show them that you're really customer focused and you're willing to go the extra mile. And then lastly, you need to show how you resolve the situation. If they ask you about a time you gave, good customer service and there's no bookend to that, there's no resolution, that's not successfully answering this interview question. So when you answer this question, that's what you need to demonstrate. All right, so let's talk about the next one. Describe a time when your team or company was undergoing some change. How did that impact you and how did you adapt? I love this question as a person who's being asked it, because I think it gives you a lot of opportunity and it gives you a window into potential future change. If I was a recruiter, I wouldn't ask this question unless I knew that my company was prone to go through significant changes or the department was planning to go through a significant change. Because otherwise, while important, it's not super relevant, right? It's not information that you feel like you would need to get out of an interview. So if you get asked this question, be ready for change. So I think it's important here to really demonstrate one thing. You need to talk about a past example in which you went through change, but you were an enthusiastic early adopter, right? I think that's key. Talking about how, yep, my organization went through this change. Here was the why as to how they did it, and I was motivated by that. I led from the front, and I was a significant component in the successful change of my department's adherence to whatever the new policy or procedure or change was. So I think that's the key here. It's giving a story about there was a change that was introduced, you were enthusiastic about it, you led from the front, and you were eager to adopt and implement whatever change that was. That's gotta be what drives your involvement in the change. Give an example of a time when you worked with others to complete a task. If you get this question, I think it's quite clear your role will be very team-oriented. You are going to be working with other people. You're going to be in teams often. The successful teaming is just critically important, right? So I think you need to do a few things. The core of this story needs to talk about how you are a team player, right? That needs to be clear. And you're motivated by team success, not individual accolades, but rather you're motivated when the team succeeds. And that's what your actions are moving towards. You also have to describe how you're good under pressure, right? Because that's one quality that people look for with people who are in teams. They want people who are good teammates who aren't going to fold when a situation gets challenging. And then the next thing, if your example shows how you volunteered or you led or you picked up slack, that is another great thing you can do. Okay, let's talk about the next one. Describe a long-term project that you managed. How did you keep everything moving along in a timely manner? So if you get this question, you know you're going to be required to lead. Maybe it's a project manager role, maybe it's a project supervisor, maybe it's something where you're going to have to manage the actions of others, but indirectly, right? You're not their manager necessarily, but you need to keep it moving forward. So what's important here when you're answering this question is you have a firm grasp on the project, what needs to happen, the people involved in it, and what a successful outcome is. And you need to talk about how you were strategic, how you cooperated and led others, and bonus points here, if you can talk about a challenge that you encountered and how your leadership was the catalyst to you overcoming it. If you can do these things while you answer this interview question, you'll succeed. Next question. Give an example of a time you disagreed with your supervisor and how you handled it. This is a really powerful behavioral interview question because it shows how you navigate a challenging situation. The reality is a lot of supervisors and bosses are not going to have all the information that you have as the person who is dealing with the situation day to day. A manager and an individual contributor, their roles look very different. They're dealing with different things, they have different responsibility, and as such, a manager doesn't always have information that you might have when it's your daily task. So you need to do a few things. When you're asked this interview question, it's an opportunity to show maturity, right? Your decision-making ability, and ultimately the respect that you show a superior when maybe they're wrong about something. So you need to give a clear example as to what they said, why you disagreed with it, the information you had access to, and why you thought there was perhaps a better course of action. And then finally, you need to communicate how you resolve this with your manager, how you were able to bring it up to them and say, hey, I know you said this, but I want to make you aware of this. I think if we did this, it would actually be better. And then ultimately, your story should end with you having a successful outcome in which your manager went, yes, thank you. You were right there. Thanks for bringing that up. And it was successfully resolved. Let's move on to the next one. Give me an example of a time when you met an aggressive deadline. This is a very common interview question, and I think it's a really good one. You'll probably get asked this if you have a role where there's deadlines, right? In which you're going to need to deliver time and time again successfully under pressure. So when you're telling this story, right, when you're answering this interview question, first thing you need to do is establish the deadline. Here's how long I had to successfully complete blank. The next thing you need to do is your example needs to show you working fast, but also with precision. None of this works if you move quickly, but a bunch of stuff went wrong. So you need to talk about how, you know what, I had to do this, but I was successful at doing it because blank. You know, I was very careful because blank, etc. And then the last thing you want to do is you want to talk about how you thrive in that situation. Like, these are the situations that I really excel in. Because if they're asking this interview question, it's going to be something that probably comes up in your day-to-day, and they'd be happy to know that it's the type of situation in which that's where you're best. So when you're answering those interview questions or that interview question, specifically accomplish those things, and you'll answer well. Give me an example of a time when you were able to successfully persuade someone to see your side of things at work. So this is kind of similar to the boss one, right? But maybe this isn't a leadership role, but it's a role rather where you're going to have to influence your peers. So if you get this question, it might be a lead role, it might be a senior role, but you might be responsible for helping influence others. So I think it's really important to talk about how you hear the other person, right? You respect their opinion, you listen to it, but you're able to reason with them and show them a better course of action that ultimately is successful. So you heard someone else's opinion respectfully, you were able to think it through, offer up a better solution, and persuade them in a way that ended with a successful project. That's the key to answering this question. Similar to the other one, a little bit different, but if you can do that, you'll answer well. Give me an example of a time when you went above and beyond in your work. What happened? Again, this is a very common interview question. They want you to show that you are very committed, right? Maybe it's a story in which you volunteered. You said, hey, I'm raising my hand, I've got this. And then it needs to show how you made a positive impact, right? You know, you saw a situation, you volunteered, you jumped in, and you were successful. And then I think the last thing you need to do is, you know, show how you did it because you're a team player, right? You care about the outcome. Even when maybe it's not your role, you care about success for the organization. Going above and beyond, that kind of indicates that they're looking for you to do something that maybe isn't your typical responsibility. All right, last one. So give me an example of a time when you didn't meet the deadline. How did you handle it? This is a really good one, and it's the only one I've included here in this video in which you failed, which is quite common. People love asking these questions because they are tough, and they want to see your honesty, your authenticity, and that you're okay with admitting fault and moving forward, right? So the first thing you need to do is explain, you know, in this example, you have to have failed. You can't give an I almost failed thing. You have to give an example where you did actually fail. That's one of the things they're looking for, someone who is okay with admitting that. If you give one of those, well, I almost failed, they're gonna see it as you not really answering the question. The second thing, you need to explain the lesson or takeaway. You need to say, you know what, this happened to me, but this is what I learned from it. This was really important to me, and I learned a lot from falling short. And then lastly, explain how you are different because of the experience. This altered you in a positive way, blank. I would also add here, the last thing, make sure it's not too significant of a failing. You know, this isn't one where you accidentally burn down your office, right? That's a problem. But everybody can relate to missing deadlines and small things, so make it something like that. Well, there you have it. There are 13 of the most popular behavioral interview questions and how to answer them. If you like this video, please like and comment. It motivates me to keep making more videos. And if you haven't, if you're seeing this on YouTube, you know, please subscribe. I always appreciate it. And there you have it. Thank you for watching. Good luck in your next interview. You've got this.